Business now from Stephen. He's with me here on set. You're starting in Washington, aren't you, Stephen? Talks over a stimulus in the economy. Inching is probably the word, isn't it? Closer to a deal. You've been saying this for a few days.
It's still
Stephen,
true.
I've
every
noticed.
Day, every day that
it's
I
as
say
bad
it,
as
it seems to
Brexit
get-
talks, isn't it?
Well,
Just
exactly,
goes on
yeah.
and on and on.
In this case, the Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says they've made significant progress on getting towards a deal. So things are moving in the right direction, and that's after two meetings between the four key people in these talks. That's the Republican and Democrat leaders in both the House of Representatives and in the Senate. This is a battle over the price tag for an overall plan, but also exactly where that money will go. The current plan that's being discussed would include subsidies for businesses, help for airlines, money to help the rollout of the coronavirus vaccine, and also the extension of some unemployment benefits. And that's particularly important because there are 10 million Americans whose jobless benefits are set to expire on the 26th of December, so this is going to be particularly crucial for them. The overall package, worth around $750 billion, that's based on a proposal that was put forward by a group of bipartisan senators earlier in the week. There are sticking points that remain, though. For the Republicans, they want this bill to include liability protections for businesses related to the pandemic, while the Democrats want $160 billion for state and local government to be included. Those are the key points, we're told, that are still up for discussion.
Do these talks have a deadline at all?
Well, at midnight on Friday, funding for the US government will run out and would cause a partial shutdown. So lawmakers have been working separately on a package to try and deal with that. That's worth $1.4 trillion. That's said to be essentially finished. And the hope is the stimulus bill could be rolled in with that in time. Now, this funding package will be the last piece of major legislation passed under the Trump administration. It will include more than $1 billion for the US-Mexico border wall, for example. So those talks happening in parallel to these ones over a stimulus plan. Mitch McConnell saying that he wants a deal done before politicians break for Christmas. So there's still a bit of time to go, but not very much.
Is this affecting the markets?
Well, it is something that the markets like stimulus a lot, so they're very pleased that these talks are going well. And the fact that this fiscal help has been called for by the Federal Reserve and the incoming president also give you an idea of how important it is. It's creating some optimism in trading on the markets today. European shares starting the day up. You can see gains there in London, Paris and Frankfurt. On the Asian markets, gains across most of the markets in trading today. Just the Shanghai Composite dipping into the red there ever so slightly, but the Hang Seng in Hong Kong up by 0.9%.
Got a trade tussle for you next on the programme. This is an escalating trade tussle between China and Australia and an appeal to the World Trade Organization.
The Australian government is calling in the WTO after China imposed tariffs of over 80% on imports of Australian barley. Now, that's essentially put a halt to trade that's worth around 900 million euros a year. China says it's imposing tariffs because Canberra has been subsidising barley growers illegally. The Australian government has rejected that. Trade Minister Simon Birmingham has now called for the WTO to intervene and rule on the dispute, saying they were calling in the umpire as trade relations have worsened.
Look, we've seen, as I've reflected through the course of the year, that the risk profile of trading and doing business with China has grown throughout the course of this year. That the fact that China has accumulated a series of decisions that look like sanctions against Australia obviously changes that risk proposition for Australian businesses and industries as they choose to consider doing business with China.
Well, the WTO process could take years, could be very damaging for Australia's relationship with China.
China's Australia's biggest trading partner, their trading relationship worth 150 billion euros in 2019. Things have been souring over the last 2 years, though. A leaked memo last month from a Chinese diplomat gave us some idea of the causes of that. It pointed to the Australian ban on Huawei being involved in the country's 5G networks, and also what was described as disinformation around China's handling of the coronavirus as reasons for the decline in relations. Beijing has already hit 13 Australian products with sanctions as well, limits on beef, tariffs on wine, that sort of thing. Earlier this week, the Chinese media were reporting that they were banning imports of coal from Australia. That would be an absolutely massive move because that's a huge export from Australia. The Chinese government says that it's not officially aware of any formal ban, but the coal industry representatives in Australia say they have ships that have been stopped outside ports in China about this, so that one's still playing out as well.
Finally, from Stephen, users of Facebook in the UK will be facing some new terms and conditions.
The social media giant is to move UK users onto US-based agreements from next year. Currently, UK users use the platform under arrangements with the Irish subsidiary of the company, which is where its EU headquarters are based. Facebook says it's making the changes to respond to Brexit, but that it won't change the privacy controls or services that it offers. UK users will still be protected by British privacy law, which largely mirrors the EU protections known as GDPR, which are among the strictest in the world. But privacy advocates in Britain have been worried that standards may slip as London pursues trade deals with other countries like the United States.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Good to have you with us in the studio as ever. Stephen Carroll here with Business and